They thought I was stupid. For 15 years, my own family looked at me like I was the family charity case, the one who'd never amount to anything. What they didn't know was that while they were busy flaunting their designer bags and country club memberships, I had quietly built something they could never touch. And tonight, at my grandmother's estate reading, they were about to find out exactly how wrong they'd been about me. My name is Sarah, and I'm 34 years old. For most of my adult life, I've been the invisible one. The sister who chose teaching over law. The daughter who drove a 10-year-old Honda instead of leasing a BMW. The granddaughter who wore thrift store dresses to family gatherings while everyone else paraded in labels I couldn't pronounce. But invisibility, I learned, can be a superpower. It started with my grandmother, Elena. While the rest of the family saw her as their golden ticket to generational wealth, I saw her as the woman who taught me that true strength comes from understanding people, not impressing them. She ran a small flower shop downtown, nothing glamorous, but she had this way of reading people that was almost supernatural. She could tell you everything about a person just by watching how they treated her employees. "Sarah," she'd say, her weathered hands arranging roses in the back room, "people show you who they are when they think no one important is watching. Remember that." I was 12 when she first said those words. I'm 34 now, and they've guided every decision I've made since. The family dynamics were established early. My brother Marcus, the golden child, became a corporate lawyer. My sister Diana went into real estate, specializing in luxury properties. Both of them married well, lived in gated communities, and treated family gatherings like networking events. Then there was me, teaching 8th grade English in a public school, living in a modest apartment, dating a mechanic named Tom who fixed cars and read poetry in his spare time. At every holiday, every birthday, every family function, I was the recipient of their pity disguised as concern. "Sarah, honey, you know there are teaching positions at private schools that pay so much better," Diana would say, her Botox preventing any genuine expression of empathy. "Maybe it's time to think about your future more seriously," Marcus would add, straightening his Hermes tie. "I could get you an interview at a firm. Administrative work, but it's a start." Their spouses would nod sympathetically, as if my life choices were a terminal diagnosis they were all too polite to mention directly. What none of them knew was that while they were climbing corporate ladders and accumulating debt to maintain their lifestyles, I was learning. Grandmother Elena didn't just run a flower shop. She was a silent partner in 12 different businesses throughout the city. She owned rental properties. She had investments that would make their financial advisors weep with envy. And she was teaching me everything. Every Sunday, while they were at their country club brunches, I was in her back office, learning about market analysis, property management, and the art of making money work for you instead of the other way around. She'd show me spreadsheets that revealed a financial empire built on patience, intelligence, and the ability to spot opportunities that flashier investors missed. "The secret," she'd whisper, pointing to a particularly profitable investment, "is that everyone underestimates the quiet ones. They think if you're not shouting about your success, you don't have any." By the time I was 30, I had a portfolio worth more than Marcus and Diana's combined annual salaries. But I kept teaching, kept driving my Honda, kept living simply. Because grandmother Elena had taught me something else: the moment you start living for other people's approval, you stop living for yourself. The call came on a Tuesday evening in March. Grandmother Elena had passed peacefully in her sleep. She was 87, sharp until the end, and according to her longtime lawyer, Mr. Hendricks, she had very specific instructions about her estate. The reading was scheduled for the following Friday at 6 p.m., at the law offices of Hendricks and Associates. The whole family would be there: Marcus and his wife Jennifer, Diana and her husband Robert, my parents, and me. Mr. Hendricks had been mysteriously tight-lipped about the details, saying only that Elena had left very specific instructions about how the information should be shared. The days leading up to the reading were filled with the kind of barely contained excitement that families experience when significant money is involved. Diana called me twice, ostensibly to check on how I was handling the grief, but really to speculate about inheritance amounts. Marcus sent a group text about family financial planning and suggested we all meet with his investment advisor after the reading. My parents, bless them, were caught between their children's obvious anticipation and their genuine grief over losing my grandmother. Dad called Wednesday night, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Your grandmother loved you kids equally," he said, though I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. I hope she understood everyone's different circumstances. The subtext was clear. Marcus and Diana had expensive lifestyles to maintain. They had mortgages on houses they could barely afford, private school tuition for their children, and social obligations that came with hefty price tags. I, in their minds, was single, childless, and living so far below my means that any inheritance would be purely supplementary. What they didn't know was that in the weeks before her death, grandmother Elena and I had had several long conversations about family, legacy, and the difference between deserving something and earning it. "I've been watching them," she'd said during our last Sunday together, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. 40 years I've been watching them. "And you know what I see?" I waited, knowing she had more to say. "I see people who love the idea of me more than they love me. They love what I represent to their future. They love the security my money might provide them." But when was the last time Marcus asked about my health instead of my investments? When did Diana last visit without mentioning some financial stress she was experiencing? It was a rhetorical question, but the answer hung in the air between us. My siblings visited dutifully, called regularly, and always managed to work their financial pressures into the conversation. Not directly, never directly. They were too sophisticated for that. But grandmother Elena had taught me to listen for what people weren't saying as much as what they were. "And then there's you," she continued, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "You're the only one who visits because you want to see me. You're the only one who asks about my day, my thoughts, my memories. You're the only one who sees me as a person instead of a bank account." I'd tried to protest, to defend my siblings, but she'd raised a hand to stop me. "I'm not criticizing them, sweetheart. I understand why they are the way they are. This world teaches people to value the wrong things. But understanding something doesn't mean rewarding it." Friday arrived with the kind of gray March weather that makes everything look like a noir film. I chose my outfit carefully, a simple black dress I'd owned for years, minimal jewelry, my grandmother's small pearl earrings. Looking at myself in the mirror, I saw exactly what my family would expect to see. The poor relation, dressed appropriately for her station, grateful for whatever scraps might fall her way. The law office was exactly what you'd expect from a firm that had been serving wealthy families for 3 generations. Dark wood, leather-bound books, oil paintings of stern-looking men who'd probably been judges or senators. Mr. Hendricks, a distinguished man in his 70s, greeted us in the reception area with the kind of professional sympathy that comes from decades of delivering life-changing news to grieving families. Marcus arrived first, of course, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Jennifer was beside him, perfectly coiffed and checking her phone with the mechanical precision of someone who never stops networking. Diana and Robert arrived moments later, Diana's designer handbag prominently displayed, Robert's Rolex catching the light as he gestured during conversation. My parents looked tired and sad, which was appropriate, considering we were there to distribute the worldly possessions of a woman they'd loved for over 40 years. I felt a surge of protectiveness toward them, knowing they were about to witness something that would change how they saw their children forever. "Shall we begin?" Mr. Hendricks asked, guiding us into a conference room dominated by a massive oak table. We arranged ourselves predictably. Marcus and Jennifer on one side, Diana and Robert opposite them, my parents at one end, me at the other. Mr. Hendricks took his place at the head of the table, a thick folder in front of him. "Before we begin with the formal reading," he said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to share something Elena specifically asked me to tell you. She said that this family taught her the difference between love and expectation, and that her final wishes reflect lessons she hoped you might learn from her choices. He opened the folder and began reading in the formal tone required by law, but the numbers that emerged were staggering. Grandmother Elena's estate was worth $12.3 million. $12.3 million. I heard Jennifer's sharp intake of breath, saw Marcus lean forward in his chair, watched Diana's eyes widen with undisguised hunger. The bulk of the estate, Mr. Hendricks continued, including all business interests, properties, and investment accounts, totaling $11.8 million, is bequeathed to Sarah Elizabeth Morrison. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Then Marcus found his voice. I'm sorry, what? Mr. Hendricks repeated the information, his tone neutral but his eyes, I noticed, flickering toward me with something that might have been approval. That can't be right, Diana said, her voice rising. There has to be a mistake. Sarah doesn't even. I mean, she's not equipped to handle that kind of responsibility. Elena was very specific, Mr. Hendricks replied calmly. She also left detailed explanations for her choices, which she asked me to read aloud. He pulled out a letter, written in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting. To my family, he began reading. I have spent the last 40 years watching each of you become the people you chose to be. Marcus, your intelligence and ambition impressed me, but your assumption that success entitles you to more success concerned me. Diana, your drive and social grace served you well, but your belief that appearance matters more than substance disappointed me. Sarah, your quiet strength and genuine compassion reminded me daily why I worked so hard to build something worth leaving behind. Marcus's face was flushing red. Jennifer was staring at me like I'd just revealed myself to be an alien species. Diana looked like she was calculating whether she could contest the will and what it might cost her. Mr. Hendricks continued reading. I leave the majority of my estate to Sarah not because I love her more, but because she is the only one who learned the lessons I tried to teach. She understood that wealth is a responsibility, not an entitlement. She built her own financial independence without fanfare or expectation of reward. Most importantly, she loved me for who I was, not what I could provide. The room felt like it was spinning. My parents looked stunned but not entirely surprised, as if pieces of a puzzle they'd been unconsciously assembling were suddenly falling into place. This is ridiculous, Marcus exploded, standing up so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. Sarah's a schoolteacher. She has no business experience, no understanding of complex financial instruments. This money will be wasted. Actually, I said quietly, speaking for the first time since we'd entered the room, I think you'd be surprised by what I understand. Something in my tone made everyone look at me more carefully. For the first time in decades, I had their complete attention. Grandmother Elena didn't just leave me money, I continued, my voice growing stronger. She spent 15 years teaching me how to manage it. While you were all asking her for loans and investment advice for your various financial crises, I was learning from her. Every Sunday, for 15 years. Diana's mouth fell open. What do you mean, learning from her? I mean she taught me everything. How she built her portfolio, how she identified profitable investments, how she managed her properties. Did you know she owned 12 businesses? Did you know she had rental income from 37 different properties? Did you know her flower shop was just the visible tip of a financial empire worth over $12 million? The silence that followed was different from the first one. This wasn't shock at the numbers. This was the slow, dawning realization that everything they thought they knew about our family dynamics was wrong. But you're a teacher, Jennifer said weakly, as if my profession somehow disqualified me from financial literacy. I am a teacher, I agreed. Because I love teaching. Because I find it meaningful. Because Grandmother Elena taught me that you don't choose your work based on other people's expectations. But I'm also a teacher with a personal investment portfolio worth $3.2 million, built entirely through my own savings and the knowledge Grandmother Elena shared with me. Marcus sat down heavily. 3.2 million? As of yesterday's closing bell, yes. Though it fluctuates daily, obviously. Diana was shaking her head slowly, like someone emerging from a concussion. But you live in that tiny apartment. You drive that old car. We thought. You thought what? That because I didn't feel the need to broadcast my financial success, I didn't have any? That because I chose to live modestly, I was living paycheck to paycheck? The truth was settling over them like fog, obscuring all the assumptions they'd built their relationships with me on. Why didn't you tell us? My father asked, and I could hear genuine hurt in his voice. I looked at him, this man who'd raised me to value honesty and integrity, and felt a pang of guilt. Because grandmother Elena taught me something important about people. She taught me that the moment you have something others want, they start seeing you differently. They start calculating what you might be worth to them instead of appreciating what you are to them. I gestured around the table. Look at how you're all looking at me right now. 5 minutes ago, I was the family charity case. Now I'm suddenly worth paying attention to. Which version of me is real? Which version deserves your respect? Marcus ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I remembered from childhood when he was frustrated. This is insane. You can't seriously think grandmother Elena was being fair. We have children to consider, mortgages, responsibilities. You have choices, I corrected him. You chose houses you could barely afford. You chose private schools you had to stretch to pay for. You chose lifestyles that required more money than you made. Those weren't responsibilities thrust upon you. Those were decisions you made. So what, we should have lived like you. Hiding our success, pretending to be poor? Diana's voice was sharp with defensiveness. You should have lived authentically, I replied. Instead of spending money you didn't have to impress people whose opinions shouldn't matter to you. Mr. Hendricks cleared his throat gently. There are additional bequests, he said, returning our attention to the legal matter at hand. He continued reading. Marcus and Diana each received $100,000, enough to help with immediate financial pressures but not enough to maintain their current lifestyles indefinitely. My parents received the house they'd lived in for 30 years, which grandmother Elena had apparently owned and let them believe they were renting at below market rates. She also left specific instructions, Mr. Hendricks added, that Sarah is under no obligation to share her inheritance with family members, and that any attempts to contest the will would result in the contested party forfeiting their own bequest. The meeting concluded with the kind of strained politeness that families use when they're too shocked to process their emotions properly. Handshakes with Mr. Hendricks, mumbled condolences, promises to talk soon that everyone knew were lies. In the parking lot, the facade finally cracked. This is unbelievable, Diana hissed, her perfectly composed mask slipping. 15 years of family dinners, holidays, celebrations, and you never once mentioned that you were secretly wealthy? I wasn't secretly wealthy, I said calmly. I was privately building wealth. There's a difference. Marcus stepped closer, his voice low and intense. You let us worry about you. You let us feel sorry for you. You let us think we needed to take care of you. When did you ever take care of me? I asked, genuinely curious. When did you ever offer help that didn't come with judgment about my choices? The question hung in the air because we all knew the answer. They'd never offered help. They'd offered pity, condescension, and unsolicited advice about how I should live my life. But actual support, actual care, actual concern for my well-being? That had come from grandmother Elena, and from Tom, and from the few friends who knew me well enough to see past the surface. You should share it, Jennifer said suddenly, speaking directly to me for the first time. Family shares. That's what family does. I looked at this woman who'd been part of our family for 8 years, who'd never once asked me about my life beyond superficial pleasantries, who was now demanding I redistribute my inheritance to better suit her expectations. You're right, I said. Family does share. Grandmother Elena shared her time, her knowledge, her wisdom, and her love. She shared Sunday afternoons teaching me about life and business. She shared her stories, her experiences, her hopes for our family's future. She shared everything that mattered. I paused, letting that sink in. What did you share with her? What did any of you share with her beyond your financial problems and social obligations? The truth was devastating in its simplicity. They'd taken from grandmother Elena for decades while I'd spent time with her. They'd seen her as a resource while I'd seen her as a person. They'd loved what she could do for them while I'd simply loved her. As I drove home that night, I felt a mixture of emotions I'm still processing months later. Sadness for relationships that had been built on false assumptions. Anger at being underestimated for so long. Relief at finally being seen clearly. And underneath it all, a deep gratitude for a grandmother who'd taught me that authenticity is the only currency that matters. The months since the will reading have been revealing. Marcus and Diana have both reached out, ostensibly to rebuild our relationship but actually to position themselves for future financial considerations. Their attempts at reconciliation are transparently transactional, proving everything grandmother Elena believed about their motivations. My parents, on the other hand, have surprised me. Dad called 2 weeks after the reading, not to discuss money but to apologize. "I'm sorry we never really saw you," he said, his voice thick with regret. "Your mother and I got so caught up in worrying about your security that we never noticed you'd already secured it yourself." That conversation led to others, deeper ones, about family dynamics and expectations and the way money reveals character rather than creating it. My relationship with my parents is healing, becoming more honest and equal than it's ever been. Tom, my mechanic boyfriend whom my family had always politely ignored, proposed 3 months after the will reading. Not because my financial status changed, but because he'd been planning it for months and had been waiting for the right moment. He'd known about my investments all along, had even helped me research some of them, and had never treated me differently because of them. "You're the same person you were yesterday," he said when I told him about the inheritance. "Just with more zeros in your bank account." That's when I knew I'd chosen the right person to build a life with. I still teach 8th grade English. My students still challenge me daily, still surprise me with their insights, still remind me why I chose this profession in the first place. The only difference is that now I know I'm teaching by choice, not necessity, and that knowledge makes every day feel like a gift rather than an obligation. I've started a scholarship fund for students from low-income families who want to pursue higher education. I've quietly paid off the medical debt for 3 families in our community. I've invested in local businesses owned by women and minorities who couldn't get traditional funding. I'm doing exactly what grandmother Elena hoped I'd do with her legacy, using it to create opportunities for others while staying true to my own values. The most interesting development has been watching how people outside my family treat me now that word has spread about my inheritance. Suddenly, I'm being invited to social events I was never considered for before. Financial advisors are calling with investment opportunities. Real estate agents are showing me properties I never expressed interest in viewing. It's exactly what grandmother Elena warned me about, and exactly why she taught me to value authenticity over approval. Last week, I received a letter from Diana. Not a text, not an email, but an actual handwritten letter. In it, she apologized for years of condescension and admitted that she'd never really tried to know me as a person. She asked if we could start over, build a relationship based on honesty rather than assumptions. I'm still deciding how to respond. Part of me wants to forgive and move forward. Part of me wonders if this newfound interest in knowing me is genuine or strategic. Grandmother Elena's voice whispers in my memory, "People show you who they are when they think no one important is watching." The question is, am I important enough now for their authentic selves to emerge, or will I always be seeing carefully crafted versions designed to maintain access to my resources? Time will tell, I suppose. What I know for certain is that I'm no longer the family charity case, the one everyone felt sorry for, the sister who needed guidance and protection. I'm the one who listened when wisdom was being shared, who learned when lessons were being taught, who chose substance over style when it mattered most. I'm the one grandmother Elena trusted with her legacy, not because I was perfect, but because I was present. Not because I was successful by conventional standards, but because I understood what success actually means. I'm the one who learned that being underestimated can be an advantage, that quiet strength often outlasts loud ambition, and that the people who truly matter will see your worth regardless of your bank balance. Most importantly, I'm the one who learned that inheritance isn't just about money. It's about values, wisdom, and the knowledge that authenticity is the only investment that always pays dividends. Standing in Grandmother Elena's flower shop last Sunday, now officially mine along with everything else, I could almost hear her laughing at the cosmic justice of it all. The granddaughter they thought needed saving had been the only one who didn't need to be saved at all. I'm keeping the flower shop, by the way. Not because it's profitable, though it is, but because it represents everything my grandmother taught me about finding meaning in work, building genuine relationships with people, and creating beauty in the world without needing recognition for it. Some lessons are worth more than money. Some inheritances can't be measured in dollars. And sometimes, the person everyone underestimates turns out to be the one who understood the game best of all. If you've ever been the overlooked one, the underestimated one, the one people thought they had figured out, remember this: your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to recognize it. Your success doesn't require their approval. Your authenticity is valuable precisely because it can't be bought, borrowed, or inherited. Trust yourself. Build quietly. Love genuinely. And never let anyone convince you that being different means being less. The people who matter will see you clearly. The rest are just background noise in the story of your life. Subscribe if this resonated with you.